Hey, this Realm of the Mist podcast is brought to you proudly by the Nurses Guild.
Hi, this is Eddie Deason. You're listening to Breaking the Fourth Wall. I was Mandark in Dexter's laboratory. Ha 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 ha.
Hey, what's up, guys? Christopher Stolle back for another Breaking the Fourth Wall, and I'll tell you what, I am excited for this one. I've gotten a chance earlier to talk to one of this man's cohorts a couple weeks ago, and now for the 45th anniversary of Jaws, I get to sit down, and also October, it's Halloween month, so I get to talk to one of the men who is responsible not only for the shark, but the third movie of Jaws, and also so many other great movies, including Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joe Alves. Joe, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's nice weather. It's not so hot here in LA like it has been, so it's cooled off. It's good.
It's been weird here. It's been 75 degrees during the day and 46 at night. Which is weird for October in Philadelphia. So
I mean, we had a summer with 120 degrees in LA. It was unbelievable.
Oh my God!
So I'm glad, that's over.
Good Lord. Well, let's start at the beginning. You are first and foremost, if I've done my history correctly, you started off pretty much as a designer, special effects designer. Is that correct?
No, actually, I started when I was 19 in special effects at Walt Disney as an assistant animator, and I did the id for a movie called Forbidden Planet. Then I transferred into live action, and at that time, if you wanted to be in the art department, you start off as because it was the studio system, and everybody had their own people. So you start off as a junior set designer or a junior camera loader or a junior editor, and then you work your way up to a senior. And then if you're fortunate, you can make the transition from a set designer to an art director, which is the same thing as a production designer. And that's the transition that I made. And then also to director.
Now, I from my movie histories themselves, especially because I'm a Spielberg and Lucas enthusiast, I know during the time that you were breaking in was kind of the time where Hollywood was doing that transition from Hollywood moguls to corporations.
In the 70s, yes.
When you were breaking in, and going through those steps, those processes, was that more of the influence of the corporations, or was that the last stand of the moguls and how Hollywood worked before corporations took over?
Well, you had the system, 6 major studios, and they controlled everything.
Mm-hmm.
I would say with Coppola, Godfather, independent directors became more important. Now, when we're talking about Spielberg or Lucas, I started with Steven in television on the series called Night Gallery, and then we did a few others. And then his first movie was Sugar Land Express, and then Jaws. But he didn't have the power then. The power came when Jaws went from a movie that the studio wasn't really quite sure they wanted to make. They tried to cancel it a few times. They thought $3 or $4 million shark movie. And then it became the biggest grossing picture of the time.
Right.
So now you have that importance. And then, of course, we did Close Encounters, and then you have Lucas doing Star Wars. So those individuals became more important than the studio. And so about that time, the studio system started to break down. Normally, you got your job through the studio, like a department head of the art department would say, Joe, you're going to do this, or you're going to do that. And so that's how I got Sugar Land Express. Oh, there's a young director. You worked with him on television. You're going to do that. and so the transition, changed, and I would say mid 70s.
Now you mentioned you worked with Steve in television, and then of course in his first movie, and then of course we come to the all important 45th anniversary, Jaws.
Right.
Now I've got to ask this, especially since you were one of the designers of Bruce the Shark, and of course it's legendary how for lack of a better term, aggravating it was that the shark didn't work, although it probably worked to the benefit of the film, since the shark wasn't in it as much as it was originally supposed to be.
That's not
Um,
true.
that's not true.
No.
Oh, okay. Because
I could show you that because, for an example, in my book, I storyboarded every sequence with the shark.
okay,
Everything I storyboarded, we got.
okay.
I want to clarify that.
No, absolutely. I'm correct
And
me if I'm wrong.
let me say that people say the shark didn't work. Well, if it didn't work, it certainly was pretty successful. The reason, basically, when I started on the movie before Spielberg or any movie. David Brown sent me the galley sheets of the book and said, "We think this might make an interesting movie. We have to sell it to the studio. Could you make some story illustrations about that situation?" Anyway, quickly. After I did about 30 illustrations, they're all in the book here, we had a meeting of all the department heads. Marshall Green was the head of production. And at about that time, Spielberg was brought on. But before Steven was brought on, he had a cabana there on the lot. And I would go to him and I would say, "Oh, I'm doing this. Wouldn't this be great?" And we decided, if we're going to do the movie, we're going to make a full-size shark, 25 feet, and not do it in the back lot against a phony backdrop. We're going to do it in the real ocean with a full-size shark. Never been done before. When I presented that to the department heads, Marshall Green, the head of production, turned to the effects people and said, "Can you make the shark?" And they said, "No, it's never been done. I mean, and if we did, it would take at least a year and a half to develop it. And besides, we've got more important movies like the Hindenburg."
Right.
And Marshall got a little upset and said Jaws could be a bigger movie than the Hindenburg, and everybody laughed. Of course it couldn't. Bottom line, as everybody left, I was collecting my drawings. Marshall called me. He says, "Can you get the shark made?" And, I said, "Well, I'll certainly try." He says, "Well, take it off the lot. That was never done before. Find independent people and do it." So I went to Joe Lombardi, who did The Godfather, big effects guy.
Okay.
He said, I'm too busy. He says, "But that would take a year and a half to do because no one's ever developed or tested it." I went to Disney. They said they could do it, but they couldn't do it in the ocean. Finally, I found Bob Matty. All right. So by the time we got all this together, it was probably November of 73. Okay. The book came out in February of 74. And the studio, because the book was so successful, studio said, "We're going to start shooting this movie in 2 months." And I'm in the ocean too, and I had scouted Martha's Vineyard and it was very cold, and Stephen got him pushed back to 3 months. So we started in the 1st of May. Now, Bob is making 3 sharks. We needed 3 sharks, one to go left and right. We needed one on a big platform that we could engineer it to land on a boat.
Right.
So now the year and a half didn't happen. We're talking about a few months. They finished, they were doing it in California. We got the location in Martha's Vineyard. They shipped it there, finished building them and trying to test them. So basically, we shot everything without the shark.
Right.
And we used the barrels. We didn't use the barrels because we didn't have the shark. We used the barrels, and they're in my early sketches, like a Hitchcock thing. Here's the barrel. Oh, he must be there. So it's
Right.
suspense. And so the reason Stephen didn't use the shark, overuse it like they do in some of these shark movies now, is for suspense. Like Hitchcock wouldn't do it forever. The shark's out there, and then you see the barrel. Or finally, when we got the shark working, I would go to Stephen and I would say, I think the left to right shark is working, Stephen. We'll try it. If it works, shoot it. If not, it's a test. And then we got that great shot of the shark moving by the boat, and you say, "Oh my God, this thing!" And I was also told, Ron and Valerie Taylor, who did Blue Water, White Death, I talked to them a lot about the sharks, and Valerie's looking at a test for. She said, "Joe, don't move the tail so much. These things are really big, and they just sort of float along until they want to attack." So basically, I have to defend the shark for the reason it didn't have the year and a half. It had a few months. And when you see, if you ever look at the book, I story about it, a couple hundred storyboards there. All the shark activity is there. And we would just, whenever we could get it, we'd mark off, we were shooting towards the end. After we shot everything without the shark, the walk and talk.
Right.
And it was all shark. And then it started to perform. And then we got the shark breaking through the cabin. We got the shark landing, eating quit. We got, so it pretty well did everything we wanted it to do. I don't know what more,
Well, no, trust me. Again, a lot of my questions are based on documentaries that I've watched, so it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Yeah, no, I know.
Everything I have is correct. But I do know that some of the pneumatics of the shark really had an issue with the salt water and, of course, the
absolutely true
and stuff. And I wonder if the year and a half would have made a difference in your opinion.
Oh yeah, because you're testing it. I mean, the point you have it in the water,
right?
And you think you have all the electronics covered up, but somehow it gets in there. So in those tests, you would see, oh my gosh, this isn't working, this valve's not working. And then you check it out and you realize it's because the salt water got in there. So maybe we have to find a different way to seal it. So you only know how to do that is by doing it, by testing it. And we didn't have that time. And
so now we go forward. Besides Jaws, you've worked with everybody for Jaws 2 before taking director's chair for Jaws 3. The first question before we even get into Jaws 3 with 2 and 3, did the shark work better, like during the time that you were setting up for the next movies? Obviously, I would imagine found better techniques and all that, where the shark was a technically less temperamental, I guess would be the correct choice of words.
Well, we had an interesting situation. I was just finishing Close Encounters.
Okay.
And I heard that they were doing Jaws 2, and they hired this director. And but while I was on location in Mobile, Alabama, there were some beautiful beaches there, and it was just gorgeous sand, and there were no boats out in the horizon. And the problem we had with Jaws was not just the shark. We had so many boats, and I scouted it in the winter, and there are no boats. And Stephen really wanted the sequence to be isolated. They were out by themselves. That's why Clint broke the radio. And then we've got all these boats in the summertime. And so took so long to get the people to move their boats and some people. So that was one of the really strong delays. So I thought, if we ever do Jaws 2, we should do all the water stuff in Florida. All right, I got back. They had a director. And what happened was this. As I said, we made the shark away from the studio. No studio influence. Cost about $250,000 for the whole thing.
That's
Jaws 2.
I expected it to be.
Yeah, Jaws 2 is now, because Jaws is so, huge, now it's at the studio. And they've already spent $2 million making a new shark from the old one. Right. And the new director said, I want it to flip over and do all this stuff. It was crazy. Bob Matty was still on it, but there were a lot of people, studio guys on it, which didn't help a lot, slowed things down. So basically, what happened in the long run, that first director, after a couple of days of shooting, he wasn't getting things done, and they fired him.
Oof.
And so they were going to close down the movie. And there was a director I worked with on Night Gallery. I worked with all these young directors on Night Gallery, John Badham and Janot Schwark was one that I thought was really, really clever. So I went to Verna Fields, who was now vice president, and she had won the Academy Award for editing Jaws. And I says, I think before shutting down, we need somebody that could start right now and not redo the movie because it's summer. We got to start shooting. And Janot could just pick it up. So he was hired. And I ended up being associate producer of production. And I directed 80 days or so of second unit, a lot of the shark stuff that he didn't do. So Jaws 2, the shark worked a lot, but the studio executives wanted so much Jaws. Now they figured, well, the more shark we put in there, the better the movie will be. Of course, that wasn't the case. Once they started editing, Verna was there, and I shot so much shark. The kids in the rafts are breaking through and all that. So then we cut it down, but the studio executives thought more shark, bigger movie.
Right.
Not the case, So that was 2. That was the problems of 2. And Roy Scheider really didn't want to do the movie, but he had a contract. So had problems with the leading actor. But other than that, and we did shoot all the water stuff in Florida. So other than little water spouts and hurricanes, and it was a beautiful location near Pensacola.
And now we jump into Jaws 3. This one is your baby. At this point, with the success of the monumental success of Jaws 1, and I would call the relative success of Jaws 2, like you said, I think it would have probably, personal opinion, it probably would have benefited from a little less shark and a little more, like you said, the Hitchcockian.
Because that was the studio that really pushed more shark.
But I actually enjoyed Jaws 2. I actually enjoyed Jaws 3. But at that point, were you nervous about even doing a Jaws 3, or was this something always on your mind? Like, I want to tell a story. I want to tell a third story.
I was pretty well exhausted after that. But after Jaws 2, I pursued directing, and I used to race Formula cars, and I was going to do a movie about Grand Prix racing, and I had scouted all over Europe for it, and I was going to direct it. And Bill Gilmore was a producer, and he was a production manager on Jaws. So we came back, and the studio was sold to somebody else. So that sort of died. But anyway, the thing with Jaws 3, I was doing a movie called The Ninja. Nerv Kirshner was a director, worked on it for 6-7 months, scouted Japan and everything. And then it was for Fox. And then Fox was bought by somebody, and they canceled everything that wasn't shooting.
Oh, wow.
So I came back to the studio, and I went to Verna's office. I always did, to hang out. And she says, Joe, they were going to do this Jaws 3 People Zero. They were going to do a movie about making fun of the movie Jaws. They were going to make fun of the people that made their biggest movie. It was sort of disgusting, actually.
Right.
And she said, but then I think they stopped it for some reason. Maybe Spielberg got someone. Anyway, she says, there's this Jaws 3, but the studio didn't want to do it. And Alan Landsberg was a television producer, bought the rights to it.
Okay.
So maybe you could go talk to him and see about getting involved. So I went to talk to Alan, and he was going to make this cheap shark movie I said, we're going to make a shark. Oh, no, I got a lot of stock footage of shark and this and that. So he says, do you want to produce it? I said, no, either I direct or I don't want to. He said, well, go scout the locations. You need a theme park, an ocean theme park. And so I went with Richard Matheson, the writer. And when we were scouting various places in Florida, there was this film, and it was underwater with the sea, urchins and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in 3D. And I came out, and Rich said, 3D, you got to do it in 3D. I said, no, Jaws 3D. You see Jaws 3D. It takes the onus off the third because they weren't doing a lot of sequels. At that time they did Rocky 2 and 3, but sequels were not, let's say, looked upon as a good thing to do.
Right.
So I did, it was a Thanksgiving holiday. I drew a shark and I did Jaws 3D coming at you,
Right.
And I showed it to Landsberg and he got all excited and he said, let's take this to Universal. So we took it to Sid Sheinberg and he took the drawing and he said, oh God, can I have this? I said, of course, you're the president of the studio. He took it to Lou Wasserman. They came back and they said, okay, you're going to make the movie. You're going to direct the movie. But I got to tell you, Chris, I had no idea that they hadn't really done any new 3D equipment.
Right.
This was in 82, and they did the House of Wax and stuff like that with the big cameras, but they hadn't really. So Landsberg said, we're going to start shooting in October. I said, but we don't have a camera yet. And I got Jim Kotner as a cameraman, who was the loader on Jaws, and a very smart guy. And so we started shooting with this, he called it Ultra Jam, because the camera would jam. And so we had Aeroflex make us new cameras, 3D in England. And so then we had to reshoot a week of what we did with the old cameras. And then I had a producer who thought that he could tell the director what to do all the time. And I remember getting Scott Mayton, who was about 6'5", as my first assistant. I said, when the producer comes on the lot, just keep him away from me. So anyway, I was very fortunate. Leah Thompson was very, very cute. I found it was a good group. It was fun to make. I loved my camera crew, but it was so difficult, Chris. We see the dailies and getting the convergence right and going, oh my God, with the glasses and then.
Well, that's an interesting point. When you were making some of these shots with this camera, and again, I use layman stuff from documentaries and everything else that I watch. So obviously, I'm an idiot when it comes to actual filmmaking. But I know you guys like pretty much watch a playback or feedback on like a little monitor. Did you have to watch them with the 3D glasses on?
Yeah,
to see if the effect even worked right?
Yeah, that was. I got to tell you, that's when monitors still happen. Prior to that, Jaws, Close Encounter, we didn't have a monitor to see. We would see what we shot in the dailies.
Right.
But when the monitors come, you can look and say, "Oh, that's not good. Let's do it again." So that would happen in the early '80s. Yeah, it was insane trying to get the 3D. The problem I'll have. I didn't have Final Cut. I was a hired director.
Right.
So I cut the movie the same length as Jaws 1 and 2, about 2 hours.
Right.
Landsberg felt he could make more money if he had 5 screenings a day than 4. So he cut 25 minutes out of my cut.
Oh.
So when you look at Jaws 3 and you think some of the criticism said that I expedited it too much. I had a lot of fun with Leah, and John Pudge and Dennis Quaid, and I had the relationships. He cut a lot of that. So he just went, So I have to say that I'm happy the movie, I got criticized heavy for it, but the movie made a lot of money. It was very successful financially. And I must say, to this day, I still have people, that love that movie. So, but it was a difficult experience, Chris, and then the disappointment to see the final cut and you say, oh my God, because directors, to have any strength, you have to have final cut.
Well, with today's day and age in movies, with a lot of movies where a lot of things were cut or maybe didn't come out to the director's vision, case in point, say for the sake of argument, like the Star Wars special editions, or if you want more modern times, like the Zack Snyder cut or the Dahmer cut of Superman. I mean, couldn't you one day turn around and release a Joe Alves cut of Jaws?
Yeah, I could if I had it, and in 3D, because yeah, another 25 minutes. And so people ask me about that. I think I do have a real 35 millimeter somewhere. But I went on to do other things, and then the directing, was more difficult. I did quite a bit of second unit directing and designing. Starman, I did the second unit on that with John Carpenter.
Starman. That was one of my mother's favorite movies growing up.
Really? Oh yeah, Jeff Bridges. I understand he's just got cancer. He was on the news, but he's doing well. Wonderful, wonderful guy. Before Starman, I worked with John Carpenter on Escape from New York.
Okay, yes.
And that was a wonderful crew. Dean Cundy was just an incredible cameraman. We shot stuff at night that was so great. In other words, some of the films I see that are dark, you can't see anything. And yet he created the darkness, and yet you could see the characters, and where they're going. And so it's like given the atmosphere that this is night, but you don't make it so black that you can't see anything. And I thought the photography in Escape from New York was incredible,
Oh, absolutely.
First
time, it's one of those films that still hold up.
It was a funny, I must say this, the reason I did that show is I was going to do another movie. I think it was probably the race movie, and I got back and they canceled that. And the week later, my father died, and I was, all distraught. And my agent, Phil Gerst, said, "Joe, you got to go back to work. I don't care. You got to go design a movie or something." And I've got this young people, Deborah Hill and John Carpenter, who I represent, and they did Halloween and The Fog, and I'd like you to meet them. So I said, okay. And now it's their big movie. They were doing a huge movie, $6 million. Well, of course, I had done Close Encounters. That went like 25 million. At that time was a lot of money.
Right.
So I met with them, and I had a great relationship with Deborah Hill. She was a real go-getter. Yeah, we're going to do this. John was sort of laid back. Oh yeah, okay, but it worked out quite well because I'm just very enthusiastic. We got to make this. We got to shoot this. We went to New York and we got on top of the trade tower. Oh, this is New York. We can't shoot New York. Anyway, we got to find a bridge, and I got to build a wall. Anyway, we found a bridge in St. Louis, and then we found a section of downtown that they were redoing it. And so I said, this could be New York. This looks like bad New York. So it worked out so well to shoot, St. Louis and New York. And I just had things happen that were, the crew was incredible. And I was so pleased, I say, with Dean Cundy's photography. So that was a good experience. And so then I did Jaws 3. And then John asked me to design Star Wars. And I said, no, I still really want to pursue direct. He said, would you come on and be visual consultant and direct all the second unit? And so that's how that transformed into that. And that was a good experience too.
Now, it's safe to say with your catalog of history of film, whether it be dealing with the special effects department, producing, directing, or whatever, you have spent a lot of time in the fantasy genre, for lack of a better term, meaning like thriller, horror / science fiction area. Out of all your catalog, what is some of the best, your most favorite areas to work in? Like, where do you feel that you were allowed to expand the most of your imagination and vision?
Well, let me say this. When I was breaking into art direction, and I had been an assistant art director. Fortunately, I worked with Alfred Hitchcock on Torn Curtain. And so I learned a lot watching Hitchcock. And I found it very interesting. We would build half sets for Hitch, because he knew what he wanted. He didn't wait for the set to be built and then say, oh, this angle, this angle. He knew, he told me one time, the other art director was away and he called me, his assistant called me and says, Joe, I want you to build a staircase. And Mr. Newman runs down the staircase and Mr. Whitlock's going to put a painting here. And then Mr. Newman comes over to the registration desk and leaves. And I said, okay, Mr. Hitchcock, what about the reverse shot? What about that? No. You just build what I said. And I built a staircase and I built a desk and that was it.
Right.
With John Carpenter on Escape from New York, because we had such a low budget, we couldn't even afford a soundstage. I just built a section of a set, and there was a thing was walking down in New York, and if you panned over, we shot it out in the desert. There'd be a cactus here, So John was very conservative, on how he worked. But anyway, probably when I became an art director and I did Night Gallery, 3 seasons of Night Gallery, I used to do like 25 sets a week. Okay. I mean, it was just incredible. And so the director would give me a stack of scripts and say how many sets you could design that we could use the same episode, different episode, and redo it. So I would say, and then we would find things, like we had a creepy thing when Vincent Price walks down the staircase, so you search around, you find a staircase and you see what you could do with it. Mm-hmm. So that's probably was the most interesting at my time, is to do all these sets, coming up with different ideas. Quite different than doing a movie where you have a lot of time. I mean, you sit down and you start sketching out the sets that's going to shoot next week, and so Night Gallery was a big influence on how my career went.
I imagine, and again, I could be completely wrong here, but I imagine, especially with partition sets and all that, I imagine like a lot of it came down to building 2-3 blank walls and then putting in the decorations or the staircases or the reception desk for one shot. And then once the shot's done, you break those off. The walls are still there, but you break those off, then you put up a different temporary wallpaper and different things to be able to set it. Is that some of the ways you cheated, especially for a show for 3 seasons?
When I was doing Night Gallery, you got to realize it was a big studio.
Okay.
And they didn't tear sets down. All the important things, fireplaces, window units, they would put it into stock units.
The following is an important message from the Nurses Guild of Florida. We know COVID has many scared. Many of our seniors are even afraid to go to the doctors. Just the thought of being exposed to all the people in the waiting room, in addition to the doctor's staff, is a risk many don't want to take right now. However, putting off health care makes most conditions worse. The Nurses Guild has the solution. One that exposes you to just one person. Call your doctor's office and have them order a nursing assessment from the Nurses Guild. We are a 5-star Medicare home health agency. Your registered nurse in full PPE will perform a full head-to-toe assessment, vital signs and medication review, pulse oximetry, even an EKG if needed. Lab work and x-rays can also be done at home. Our registered nurse will discuss all of this strictly and directly with your doctor and get you results. All of our nurses and home health aides are fully screened, supervised, and COVID tested. Call the Nurses Guild today to arrange your home health visit at 954-596-9806 in Broward County and 561-826-8937 in Palm Beach County. Remember, healthcare put off is healthcare too late. Stay safe during the pandemic. Wear a mask and insist those around you wear a mask. Wash your hands frequently and stay home as much as possible.
So if you wanted a Victorian window unit, quite often you just went and found it and put it together, and then they would strike it. In a case like I did, the Caterpillar was an interesting set. It was supposed to be Borneo, and that was with Lawrence Harvey. And I did that. And then for sequences later, for another show, I would change the architecture a little bit and repaint it. I did that many times, So you would, redo the structure or bring in a stock unit. And But today they destroy all these things. I did, a thing for Geronimo, and it was for Columbia, and I had this incredible doors with these incredible notches and stuff in it. And after we were wrapping, they were breaking it, and I said, "You're not saving those doors?" No, we throw this stuff away. And so it's so wasteful, because those are great doors that somebody could use some other time,
Right.
But things have changed. But yeah, when you do, but now on features, you pretty well, let's see, Fire Down Below was a lot of work. That was a movie with, and we did that one in Louis. No, that wasn't Louis. That was in Georgia, and we had to build a whole. Steven Seagal was the actor,
Right.
and Steven was a little difficult. In other words,
I've heard that.
no, this was in Kentucky, and I remember in Kentucky these mountains, and they remove all the trees and they sell the lumber, and then they put grass, and then they have cattle up there. Anyway, I found a beautiful empty mountain, and I built a cabin up there.
Okay.
Mark Hemingway was the actress there. And so it's very, very green. But in Kentucky, if you wait too long, it gets red and yellow. I mean, it just changes. So we were limited on time, and we had a 7 for 8 call. And the director would be waiting for Seagal, and he wouldn't show up. So he started directing with his double, to go here and there. And he'd show up about 11 o'clock. And no, don't want to do it that way. And that's the way it went. And I said, boy, if we keep doing this, that green out there is going to be yellow.
Right.
And then there was a sequence in a casino.
Okay.
And so we figured, he just watched it. We could do it in a casino. Oh, no. I'm not going to go in a casino with smoke from other people. I had to build a casino. I literally spent $1 million to build this one big casino with all this stuff. And I had this special room that it was mirrored in the walls, so complicated,
Right.
But that was Steven. Oh, I remember the night before there was a bar, and on the bar was a stage, but there was a back bar with a bartender.
Right.
So this is late afternoon, or he says, "Oh, I don't want the bartender back there. I want the stage to come right up to the bar." I said, "But I'd have to rebuild it." Yeah, I guess so. So we spent all night rebuilding it, and in the movie, he just sort of walks by and waves at the guy singing. So that's the kind of stuff you put up with sometimes,
Is that a rare thing though? Just getting a temperamental actor once in a while?
Well, that was Steven Seagal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steven pretty well controls things. Yeah. Most actors, I've worked with some really good actors, and they're yeah. I mean, Paul Newman is just the greatest, and
Right.
people like that. So they do what they do. I mean, in other words, Seagal was doing a scene with some actor, I can't remember his name, an old actor, been around. And Seagal, he started giving the lines, and the actor says, "I'm doing the lines that I was given." And Seagal didn't remember the lines,
Right.
So yeah, you do have that. That does, it can be effective sometimes on how you approach things. But anyway, getting back.
Well, with the striking down and destroying of some props and scenes and stuff, like you were saying with the doors, for example, those really beautiful doors. How often have somebody turned around and like, look, instead of destroying it, can I take it home and install it on my house? I mean, these are good doors. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's done sometimes. I have a table. It was stainless steel, and it's probably 3 by 5 feet, all stainless. And it was a table that Rock Hudson did operations on a movie called Embryo.
okay.
And so that's in my shop. I've been using that one for 40 years, So
Right.
yeah, they're good, because that was done at an independent studio, and they were striking everything. So I said, well, I'll take that. I'll take that, you know. And yeah, that's what you could do. You could take it home.
And studios didn't greed out and it's like, oh, we're going to destroy it, but if you want to take it, you got to give me $100.
No, they just want it's just going to be destroyed. So while they're destroying it, you just take it, you know.
Nice, very nice. What other memorabilia from your career do you have from previous sites? Like, do you have one of Bruce's teeth?
Well, no, here's what I have. You know, it's interesting. I have saved. You know, I did on Jaws. I was save all my storyboards,
Right.
and I even saved little notes. What was interesting here? Let me see if I. Oh, here's the thing. This is interesting. Why would I say this? That is a notepad. Okay.
All right.
And that's when I was scouting Jaws, and every little town I went with, I made a note. I saved that. I saved. This is my script breakdown. That's how we used to do it on yellow paper.
Okay.
And I saved all these things because I just put them in a footlocker. Never felt they would be valuable. But this is all the old original storyboards, I mean, illustrations before the storyboards.
Okay.
And I saved that stuff. I have the windmill that was on top of Quinn's shed.
Okay.
And we have, of course, a lot of shark's teeth because Roy Arbogast, who made the shark, all the skins and the teeth, he's got the molds. So what would happen is we had the shark, people would steal the teeth, you know, pull the teeth, and so he have to replace them. So we would do shows and he would make copies of that. We had to use rubber teeth when Shaw is in the shark's mouth because we, you know.
I wondered if it was rubber.
Yeah,
or
so he put rubber, just, yeah, soft teeth. But yeah, but he still has those molds. And there are collectors all over that collect, you know, I didn't even think about it. You know, here's the point. It's like you do a movie, you have all this stuff, and you don't think it's going to be worth anything later. The reason, in fact, I actually gave some of my drawings away. Later, people were getting divorced, and they said, "Oh, you want these back?" And now they're worth thousands of dollars each original because I sell the copies. You know, I told you I sell the copies on my thing here.
Right.
So, yeah, it was just fortunate. I saved it. And I was talking to a collector today. It's just amazing how much stuff they used to throw away because they never thought it would be worth anything. You know, why somebody kept the red slippers, I don't know. You know, it was, I'll tell you why. Probably because it was a studio, MGM, and that just went back into storage, you know.
Right.
They wouldn't throw the costumes away. They would save it for another picture. But the drawings and stuff like that, years later, I remember them going back to the studio and seeing somebody there, and they were dumping all the old drawings. I said, that's the drawings to the Frankenstein sets. Oh, nobody cares about this stuff, you know. And of course they do now. But.
Well, of course, you know, movie buffs and collectors galore. I've got to ask you, with the catalog of movies that you've done, and you've done a lot of great, you've written, in a sense, you've written a lot of people's childhoods or early 20s and stuff of that nature. Looking back on all of them now, how many of these timeless movies like Close Encounters, like Jaws, like, you know, Escape from New York, how many of them do you look back now and go, wow, I never saw that coming? Like, you never thought they would stand the test of times that they do now.
You know, when you're working, you know what you want is the next job.
Right.
You know, and so as a designer, after Jaws, Stephen didn't have anything. We went skiing while he was cutting that, and he was going to do Bingo Long and his Traveling All-Stars. And then he started talking about, watch the sky. And Alan Hynek spoke about UFOs. I said, oh, that sounds like a more interesting project. He says, I don't have a deal, you know. So then I went and I did Embryo, and then he got a deal, and then we did Close Encounter. So basically, you're struggling through. Sugarland didn't do that well, you know. Jaws was such a difficult thing. When we got back, the studio was really upset with us. We were over budget, over schedule, and they sold the boat,
Right.
the Orca. They just dumped the sharks, and then they had a screening in Texas. And Stephen came to me, he says, Joe, I got 4 screens. I could get another screen if I could get the head coming out of the hull, you know. And I also want to see the boat splitting, as show me the way to go home. And so I did that in my garage. I built the hulls,
Right.
and with help from a friend. And they stole the head out of the makeup department. He got a cameraman. We shot it in Verna Field's swimming pool. The studio didn't have a clue that we were doing this.
Which, by the way, I hate you guys for that, because that's the one scene that even as a kid haunted me.
Well, I got to tell you. So the studio didn't know we did this. And there, you know, like there's Jaws dailies. It can't be Jaws. The Jaws is finished. Well, they saw it, and then on the next screening was in California, in Lakewood. And they didn't, well, here's the fault. Let me just say this quickly. When the shark worked, it made a lot of noise.
Right.
So when Steven said cut, the crew would laugh. That silly shark makes such weird noise. My feeling was the audience is going to laugh. I mean, I think we did a good job. I think the movie's good, but I'm afraid they're going to laugh at the shark.
Right.
And so I got to tell you, they didn't laugh. You know, they screamed. And at that time, the studio executives, Lou Wasserman, they were blown away. They didn't realize they had a movie of such importance. And they restructured the distribution from a few theaters to 450, which was huge at that time.
Right.
But in any case, to answer your question, when you do these things, you don't realize, wow, it's a big success. And being on a payroll thing, you don't make a lot of money. You know, you get scale. I got to tell you, after Jaws, after making scale on Close Encounters, I got an agent, and then I made 4 times that. You know, it just doubled. And so as it goes, Jaws was like, oh, wow. I didn't realize it was going to be such a big thing. And then Close Encounters was supposed to be released before Star Wars, but through a lot of very difficult optical effects, it took longer. So we got delayed to November, and I think that really affected Star Wars coming out, making such a big bang.
Right.
So Close Encounters was quite a different movie. I mean, it was a very emotional film. You know, the little boy and Melinda Dillon and Dreyfus going up. And let me just tell you this. Today, they would do that in green screen. But when Melinda Dillon and Dreyfus climb up the hill to look over at this big set, I built a 7-story mountain on rollers that we did in front of a projection screen that was 125 feet. It was totally different, you know, than it is today. And recently, Stephen did something for me because I had an award from the art directors, and he did a little video, and he said to this day that set was the biggest set he's ever worked on. You know,
Right.
You know, it was a football field wide and a football field and a half long, 450 feet. So as your success happens, your confidence happens, and people have more confidence in what you're going to do. So after Jaws, Close Encounters went from they wanted a little sci-fi movie to this, wow, maybe these guys could do something big. And so it just grew. So then after Close Encounters, and it was Jaws 2, and everything. And so then you just sort of roll along, and you look for another job, and that's and then now looking back after all these years, it was pretty amazing. I was very fortunate this year. The art directors gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award, and
That's awesome.
know,
Congratulations.
yeah, and Greg Nicotero introduced me, and I didn't know this, but the studio got Spielberg to make a video about, and they had all this stuff that cuts of the stuff I did. But Chris, I mean, it's time has passed, and that's what I did, and you feel very happy that you've done it. But I don't think it really affects your ego. The ego is, do I get the next job? And
Right.
when I get the next job, what can I do with it? And how much leeway will I have? And hopefully you work with good people.
Well, I would imagine, like I said, I used to be a former musician, and of course, as a musician, 9 times out of 10, your focus is, I want that one hit song. I want that one song that'll resonate, and then build from there. Your career is like a greatest hits album, and so the question was basically like, looking back on it now, it's like, wow, I'm surprised that this movie did what it did, or that movie turned out the way that it did, or this movie is still as beloved and received as it was when it released. You know what I mean? That was the meaning for the question. But I mean, overall, I can't think of anybody more deserving of a Lifetime Achievement Award. Again,
It was nice. It's interesting looking back. Fire Down Below, the one with Seagal, I did some of my best sets. It was incredible. I mean, I did this casino. I did this beautiful little cabin up at this thing. I just did one set after the other, and never got any mention about it because it was a Steven Seagal movie.
Right.
And also, I ended up, my last 2 movies were animated movies. I went back to production designing the thing called Sinbad Beyond the Veil, and it was Indian movie, and I went to India 3 times. And that was sort of interesting because I was back to drawing again. As
Right.
a designer, you don't do as much because you got all these people working for you. So I was drawing, and it was, this felt back like when I was 19, drawing at Disney. But there's something else that happened that was weird, is after I directed Jaws 3, a lot of I had a hard time getting some jobs sometimes because directors didn't want a designer that already directed a movie.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because he's looking over his shoulder. He doesn't like the way I'm doing that shot. What I mean, I did. I did. So I didn't work for a while. Taylor Hackford, I started working for him. I enjoyed Taylor, and then I went on. But it was more difficult as I got later in my career. The young directors wanted young people, and certainly if they were just starting out, they didn't want somebody who already directed, a movie that was successful. So.
See, I'd be the opposite. And again, I'm by no means a director, but I would imagine if I was doing a film for the sake of argument, and I'm putting together my crew and everything else, I think I would want somebody with your experience and your vision, regardless of whether you direct it or not, especially as an up and coming director, rather than, I want the young crew, because I think the young crew want to take chances that may or may not work. What works.
Yeah, but maybe they don't want to be influenced that much,
Right.
So anyway.
Well, right on. Well, the big thing, obviously, now we got to talk about is after all is said and done. Now you've written a book, and
I didn't write it. Dennis Prince wrote it.
All right.
And Greg Nicotero, who does The Walking Dead, he did the foreword.
Okay.
And Titan has it's got some. These are the early illustrations based on the galley sheets.
That is terrifying.
It goes through all that, and it shows. Let me see if I could. How the shark was made. You see the skeleton, the wood. See how. So it goes into great detail. If you're interested in how the movie was made, I mean, this has got every detail. I'm trying to think of. Let's see. Anyway, it goes into detail. It has, oh, here's the page I'm looking for. I did this sculpture. This is about 4 feet. And I worked with an ichthyologist, Leonard Campagno from San Francisco. And he came down and worked with me. So we got it right exactly like how a white shark should be. And this is a measurement of a 12-foot shark. And he said that the sharks are perfect at 12 feet. When they get bigger, they get girthier, they get fat.
Right.
So we didn't want a fat shark. So we doubled that 12 foot to about 25 feet. And so that's the book. And then this is joelsmovieart.com.
Right.
You can see, and it's www. Yeah, you got that. Anyway, what I sell here are copies of the storyboards and illustrations, and they're not that very expensive, you know. So that's what I'm doing now. My writer, we wrote another book on Close Encounters, but we had a lot of trouble with Sony because they didn't want us to do this and that. So, and they didn't even own it. Was Columbia Studios that we did it for, but then they bought Columbia. So they take an attitude of, everything is ours. And I had pictures of Spielberg and Vilmos Zsigmond, the cameraman, that I just took our personal. No, they wanted it all. So anyway, we published that. It didn't go too well. Universal was far more cooperative, and Spielberg was very cooperative. I mean, I got pictures with him, so there's no problem. And he's working right now on a bio starting when I was born, but basically going through the studio system and working at Disney's and then going to Fox and MGM and all these various studios, and then finding a home at Universal and then doing the various things. And so what I like about the bio is not so much that it focuses on me, but it focuses on that time, the
Right.
50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and the transition with these various directors, Hitchcock, Spielberg, John Carpenter, Taylor Hackford, what have you. And so that's in the process right now. So we keep busy. And as a hobby, I do sculpting, I've got 70 different sculptures. I started doing mermaids.
Okay.
And a woman came to interview me, and they're like big. And she says, oh, the softer side of Jaws, mermaids.
That's the next.
Anyway, that's pretty much it. It's busy, and I do these interviews and stuff occasionally.
Right
So
on. Well, in case I didn't, there's a question I didn't ask that maybe one of our listeners want to listen to. At this point, I would ask if there's a way people can contact you, social media, something like that, where they could maybe ask your question or as you said with the book, I assume the book is available pretty much at Barnes & Noble, Amazon.
Well, it's out on Amazon, yeah, and it's like $26 on Amazon, so it's not
Okay.
over. And it's a hardcover. We made a soft cover because a couple of years ago, we did a Catalina Island. The museum did a show, 6 months of Jaws stuff, and I had my drawings, and Greg Nicotero had characters that he made, and the shark, and we had all that stuff. So we did a book, a smaller book, and sold it there. And then Titan got interested, and so then they published the bigger hardcover with all the drawings. And so that's it. I guess that's about it. I don't know what questions people would ask. I don't know if I should give my email. I might end up with too many.
Oh no, I wouldn't suggest that. I didn't know if you had like maybe a Facebook account that somebody could.
No, not really.
Okay, well, not a problem. Well, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on. This has been an absolute honor and
I
treat.
sorry I had to delay 3 times or 2 times.
How you feeling, by the way? The last time we
I'm
talked.
good, but that's interesting. When I was supposed to have the tooth, it was an implant that came loose and had to be done. So they shot me up, and I thought, well, I'll be all right to talk. Well, it's a good thing because it was swell, and it took like a whole day to get rid of it. So it was a good thing We didn't do it.
I imagine the last time I had to have surgery, or not surgery, but something dentally done, I was so out of it by the end of it. That was my first thought when you're like, maybe I could still try. I'm like, no, take your time.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, because it just drained me. Whatever they shot me up with. Anyway, it's good because this worked out, I think, fine for me.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on, guys. Sir, guys, if you enjoyed this episode in any capacity, hit that thumbs up button, like, share, comment, subscribe. Check out all the other great podcasts of Realm of the Mist Entertainment. And of course, if you prefer them in audio only format, we have you covered. Just look up Realm of the Mist Entertainment on anchor.fm, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, or wherever quality podcasts can be heard. Again, I want to thank you very, very much, Mr. Joe Alves, for coming on and talking to me. It's again, it's an extra special thing. It's one of the pleasures I get from doing these podcasts, and especially since I've hooked up with Steve Joyner, to be able to sit down to talk to people that are, for lack of a better term, are my childhood heroes. And
yeah, it's interesting.
Part of the reasons I do what I do, whether it was in pro wrestling and music or even now with podcasting, is because of guys like you who kind of broke through, forgive the pun here, but broke the fourth wall and created what we know as entertainment today. So thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, my pleasure. Take care.
Absolutely. And guys, I will catch you on the next Breaking the Fourth Wall.